Hello, I'm Oral Gibbes, and welcome to Oral Gibbes Live. And with me this evening, I'm saying this evening, but anytime now we're live streaming, I have the leader of the UD party, MP Sarah Wescot-Williams. How are you doing, MP?
Very good, thank you, Oral, and thank you for having me. And shout out to all who are tuned in to this program and will be viewing the program in the future. That's the good thing about it, you know. So, yeah, thanks again for having me, Oral.
So you had the chance to meet with the new state secretary.
That's right.
What's your impression?
Well, it was nice in a way that the state secretary offered or proposed to meet with the faction leaders in Parliament. So it was not the entire Parliament, but definitely with the faction leaders in Parliament. And it was behind closed doors, so to speak. But it was nice that the state secretary made that gesture to meet, because over the years there has always been this issue of should Dutch politicians, Dutch ministers and or state secretaries meet with the parliaments of the country. You know, that has always been a discussion. Some have done it in the past, but it is not really routine. We have seen the former state secretary, for example, State Secretary Knops, and he came to St. Martin on several occasions, and I don't remember once as Parliament meeting with him, you know. So yeah, so it was nice, especially Mrs. van Huffelen, the state secretary, being new to this particular position, not new to Dutch politics. So it was nice, but as you can imagine. While the meeting was a sort of an introductory meeting, and the issue of this coho law, of course, was on the agenda, you know. Right. And it is now with all of the parliaments, this draft kingdom law called for short the Coho Kingdom Law. And so the state secretary was interested in how the different factions view the matter of the Coho proposal, because that's what it is. It's an organization, and it has been proposed that be formalized in the form of a kingdom law. Okay,
so what's your impression of her so far? Your first impression?
Yeah, well, you know, and as I can't say as can be expected, but as I expected for sure, in terms of the policies towards the Caribbean countries, I didn't expect any major changes. I didn't expect the state secretary, for example, to come and decide, well, this issue of liquidity assistance, the way it was being done, right, the coho, that these things would change. However, it's always, again, refreshing to hear a new take, you know, and of course to hear how the state secretary views the relationship with the Caribbean countries. Of course, as the old saying goes, you know, the proof is in the eating. We have to see how it's going to materialize. But we need to always remember, Oral, that the more so than, for example, we do, the Dutch politicians or the politicians of the Netherlands, they rely very, very much on their ministries and departments. So if you take the Ministry for Kingdom Relations, the so-called BZK, you know, they are the ones who would, prepare the state secretary for all of the dossiers, including ours. So you will have that kind of a continuity. How they handle it, that depends on the person. And that, coming from the new state secretary, I think for me, is reason to say, you know, let's wait and see how it's going to work out and how her approaches would be as she faces the different issues that the countries have, you know. So definitely for me, it's fine. It was nice. A nice person. We had a nice conversation, but I want to see what would happen going down the line.
Well, you're not a Johnny-come-lately. You've been around for a long time.
That's for sure not, Oral. Yes, indeed.
So I'm sure that you've had to deal with a lot of different state secretaries, and I can recall there was one way back in the 80s where the relationship was not good at all. And then we had just recently Knops, where again it was extremely combative.
Yes.
Are you optimistic now?
You know, and that's why I said, for me, it's sort of left to be seen how it's going to materialize. And the initial impression of State Secretary Van Huffelen is a good one. And you know what is always remarkable, Oral, when all of these Dutch politicians of the Netherlands, in terms of their relationship with the countries, would mention, what we're doing and what we're saying. It's for the people of the country. That's our main thrust. That's our main concern. And my answer to them is always, if you think so about the St. Martin people, imagine about the St. Martin politicians. Who else would be my interest if not the people of St. Martin, And I would even add to that and say, I don't think that you can feel more for the people of St. Martin than those persons, and I speak in my case, who represent these people, So right. Yes, fine, it's nice to hear that being said, but on the other hand, for me, it counts even more. So again, it's sort of to wait and see, and you are right. I have seen some, as we used to call them in the past, some Antillean friends who were Dutch politicians. I have also seen some. I mean, combative is a term that definitely describes the relationship sometimes that we've had it over the past, working towards St. Martin becoming a country. I mean, the kind of confrontation that we had during those years and the resistance by Dutch politicians to St. Martin becoming a country within the Dutch kingdom. I have experienced that firsthand.
And having experienced that firsthand, because you was in the Netherlands in 1996, was it? 1996, when the agreement was 2006.
2006. That's
2006.
correct. Yes, 2006.
When the agreement was.
Yes, indeed, I was when the agreement was so-called inked, right. and finally the contours of the new relationships within the kingdom were agreed to. But it took following the referendum on St. Martin, and as you know, during those initial years, St. Martin was looking, along with Saba and Statia, at developing, as we used to call it at the time, a Windward Island Economic Union. But then the subsequent referenda on the different islands proved something else. But the years before, the other islands also had their referendum, and a choice was made for their constitutional future. I mean, St. Martin fighting for its status, its new status, met with so much resistance from the Netherlands, and to me, and I attribute it to two issues, Oral, in terms of that relationship and that tension and that constant combating, if you wish. And one, the feeling that have permeated the decades of negotiations that St. Martin cannot be too small. I mean, all of those things we have heard to become a country. That's one thing. But what I have also seen, and especially under the reign of former State Secretary Knops, is this feeling of, we don't trust you, we know we have to help, we want to help, but that's going to come at a cost. And that mistrust, especially, I see the way the COHO actually was drafted and came about. I see that as an expression of that mistrust. And I told the new State Secretary that as well. The basis for the COHO is one of mistrust, and now we're going to force you because you need our assistance, and we will be given the assistance, but we are going to force you in some directions. And I think that's unfortunate that the relationship that is being built, the agreements based on the COHO the coho law, that they have come about from actually that input. They have come about from that angle, an angle of mistrust. And because, I mean, the initial proposal, oral, of the coho law actually was one to take over the administration of the country. I mean, there's no other way that you can express it. That's what it is. Totally putting aside the parliamentary control that is over and should be over any government. And so then, but then of course that needed to be adjusted because the Council of State, so the Kingdom Advisory Council of State was like, no, you to the Dutch government and to State Secretary Knops at the time, you can't be serious about wanting to impose such a structure. So we have a somewhat watered down version of the coho, but I still have my concerns about how that will work in practice.
So are you going to vote in favor when it comes to Parliament? Because a lot of people are saying it's really already law, even if it's not law.
Well, you know, and there's an element of truth to what you're saying. One, the coho operation is already working, okay? We have what is called a coho, but that is in formation, that is being formed at this time. But working on the country package and the measures coming out of the country package, that is already ongoing. That's one thing. Secondly, oral, the parliaments of the country, so St. Martin Parliament, cannot vote on this kingdom law. That too, that fact also receives a lot of criticism. What happens with this draft kingdom law now that it has been approved by the governments? And we have seen how, and I use the word, some do not like it, but I use the word that the agreement by the government of St. Martin to the coho package was done in a sort of a sneaky way. I use the word sneaky. Why? Because remember that on December the 17th, when we were waiting to get the approval from the kingdom government to deviate from the budgetary norms so that we could have a deficit budget, at that time, the government of St. Martin said, they asked for that agenda point to be postponed because former State Secretary Knops had sort of sprung that on them, you know, come and say, well, you're going to either sign this last part of the coho law or we will not give you the deviation for your budget. Be that as it may, it was not decided on December the 17th, and then all eyes were set on the February 4th meeting of the Kingdom Council of Ministers, because then it would have been agreed to. And there was a lot of hoorays when St. Martin government got a notice that it was approved. They didn't say under what conditions, they didn't say for what amount we can now have a deficit in our budget 2022, but neither did they say that the issue that they had on December 17th, why they did not go along with State Secretary Knops, but that apparently somehow, somewhere was cleared, and the government gave its approval to the coho and the financial supervision in the coho, because that was the issue back on December the 17th, the financial supervision part of the coho law. Anyhow, nothing was said when the government came out bragging, you see, we get the approval. We had asked Parliament to approve the budget ahead of, because we know we would have gotten the approval, but nothing was said about that. Lo and behold, the Monday following that announcement, then the coho itself, so the organization, that's what it is, they said, you know, there is approval for the coho law now, and other steps can be taken. But as a result, the coho law is now with all of the parliaments, the second chamber and the parliaments of the country. But the parliaments of the country do not vote on the kingdom laws. What we do with what is in our possession now, we bring out a report. And if we have questions as a parliament, they can then be posed to the Dutch government, to the Dutch ministers. and then they will answer them. And the handling of the law will take place in the second chamber, where the countries, including St. Martin, can send delegates from the parliament to the Netherlands. And there you can speak to the second chamber members. You can let them know how you feel on behalf of your parliament. You can, as a parliament and the so-called special delegates that would go to the Netherlands for the handling, and you could look at amendments. You could propose amendments. You could even propose motions. But the voting on the law, the amendments, the motion is something of the second chamber. So saying all of that, Oral, to say it depends on how that process goes in terms of fine. Is the second chamber and the Dutch government that has already given approval to the Coho law, are they willing to take any observations and concerns of the country parliament into consideration? Maybe we can get a listening ear by our colleagues of the second chamber and push for some type of an amendment, because while the Prime Minister of St. Martin, in one of her explanations, said, you know, the authority of Parliament is not taken away in this case, and no, we have ensured that it remains there.
So you agree with that?
No, I don't see where that control of Parliament is actually part of the package. Yes, in this draft law, we can ask the Coho organization to come and give Parliament information. That's one thing. They also, when they make up their yearly reports, they'll send a copy to Parliament. But I'm talking about the control in terms of what is being done at the time that it is being done. And another very, very important part, Oral, is that the Coho organization does not have a budget there waiting to dispense to the countries and say, well, okay, you know, for this measure in the country package, we are going to contribute this money. The main focus for the financing of the country package items is the local budget. And I think there is where you're going to see where you have priorities. And I always use as an example to, you know, to let people to understand that at the end of the day, where it's going to come down, well, for sure the country package is trying to keep the government to its agreements in terms of we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Take an example of, for how long have we not been hearing, Oral, of the Gaming Control Board? Government after government, minister after minister, especially the ministers of TIAT.
Yeah.
Exactly. For years. I would even say when it comes to the Gaming Control Board, for decades. Yeah, we made it, even now, even the last couple of ministers of TIAT, no, it's coming. Now this is a measure in the country package. So what you're seeing that the country package is doing, not yet the Coho, country package is trying to keep the government in a particular road, on a particular road.
But can it be there are also external forces controlling ministers, in this case, of TIAT, that make them very reluctant to push with that?
And so again, Oral, and now we are going to see, because the government / the minister has agreed that that will happen. And who you have doing the preparations and plans of approach already, Oral, there are several plans of action, not even so much plans of approach, plans of action on the different points in the country package. Where can you find these plans of action? You can find them on the website of the Coho organization. The plans of action, we talk about, we have seen a lot of uproar, some for, some against, where it pertains to the immigration raids and controls that we have had. But illegal employment or employment of non-documented persons is also a plan of approach in the Coho. But the difference being there, Oral, that it's a plan, and it outlines the steps that will be taken in order to address the issue of illegal immigration. But this is happening on the trajectory of the Coho. Yet you're seeing the government and government ministers undertaking certain action. Another example is the matter of a policy on long lease land of government, Oral. We've seen the minister, you know that whole story, and come into Parliament, motions passed, minister send a proposed policy to the Integrity Chamber answers, etc. But to come up with a policy on government long lease land is also an item in the country package. And based on the country package, implementation agendas are made for every quarter. And you can see what government is supposed to be doing based on the country package. So I think that's where government is going to see itself forced in a certain direction to do certain things, whether they are in agreement with it or not.
Okay. This program is made possible by the Windward Islands Bank. Windward Islands Bank in 3 locations, Phillipsburg, also in Simpson Bay and Cul-de-sac, the Windward Island Bank, and GEBE, the local water and electricity company for all your water and electricity needs. Is GEBE, serving the people of St. Martin. In case you've just joined us, you're watching Oral Gibbes Live with the leader of the UD party, MP Sarah Wescot-Williams. She's my guest on the program this evening. And MP, you know, I probably have said this to you many times because I've been around a long time in this business, and I'm so disappointed. I find myself don't even want to follow developments anymore. I think back to 1980 and the Roundtable conferences and what happened after that, and Aruba leaving. And I can't imagine that we're here sitting today speaking about the things that you just mentioned, and I think so eloquently explained. Are you surprised?
Oral, you know, and I said this in the meeting with State Secretary Van Huffelen. So in a recent meeting last week that we had with the faction leaders of Parliament, and I said, you know, while you got the coho law and how the Dutch government is dealing with liquidity assistance to the country, which, by the way, which I also told the State Secretary, is actually, these are loans that we are receiving, which of course is increasing our debt position. But the point that I made to her was that, you know, St. Martin, and I think this is where, Oral, we have been sort of fishing behind the net, as we would say in a Dutch slang, because we are not clear on our position as a country within the Dutch kingdom. That is where it starts. And we have seen the motions and the petitions to the UN, etc. But we need to be clear. What is it that we really want for our position? And you can take different stances on that. Are we going to say, for right now, given where we're at, and our dependency on liquidity assistance from the Netherlands, are we going to hold off a moment and focus on the development of this country? That's one thing. Or are we going to take a stance and say, you know, we don't like what is happening to us, and this motion of November 2020, you know, with all of the different things, and you're doing that to a country that at the same time you're looking for assistance from. You understand what I'm saying? Also, that's where you got to be clear. What is your position? You're talking now about decolonization. What it is that you want, government. That is not MP Wescott position to take. I am not in a majority, but what is my responsibility is to hold the government accountable, and the government needs to be clear, Oral. And if we are seeing lately where, for whatever the reasons, you're getting the coalition part in Parliament calling out their own government, and then you ask yourself, you just can't pick up the phone and say, hey, you know, this is what I, as your coalition partner, think or do not think. But what we are seeing this playing out in public, and it creates the impression of us that we really don't know what we want. And that's unfortunate.
Well, I guess what we've seen is one political party member calling another member a dumb, what have you.
But that's even worse. You know, those kind of things, and then it's just swept under the rug. And Oral, like you said, and you wouldn't believe how many persons I have heard say exactly what you're saying. Well, you know, it makes no sense to follow the developments anymore. Whether it's a business person or someone working, they say, you know, I just try to do my job, have my income, take care of my family, you know, and try to survive. And if you have many businesses thinking the same way, you know, in terms of, well, I ain't following the developments no more. I'm just trying to do what I can do as a business, and again, try to survive and keep my business going. There are too many persons who, in my opinion, should be able to contribute to the country in terms of hearing them, listening to them, you know, but are saying, I just gonna do my thing, kind of, you know, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate.
I did an interview with Ronald Groeneveld, who is deputy governor. He's also an attorney, and he alluded to the fact that we've made some errors in terms of our handout to the Dutch government, looking for too much aid, and then they're going to decide for us what we should decide for ourselves in a way. I'm just paraphrasing what he said. And I was surprised that he thought like that, because I think he was correct, that we have turned to Holland for everything. And now they're saying, look guys, you got to play by our rules. You go to the bank for a loan, you have to follow the directions of the bank. And that's basically what's happening right now in Holland.
And you know, and Oral, and I want to add to that the fact that, remember Oral, when, nobody could have predicted a pandemic like the COVID. Okay, so St. Martin, just like every country in the world, was caught by surprise as to the magnitude and the force with which this virus attacked the world. So that's one thing. We have, like we have done after hurricanes. Then you start to look at the bigger country within the Dutch kingdom, which is the Netherlands. They too had and have their issues also relating to the COVID pandemic, but they are the ones that have agreed to this kind of solidarity operation within the Dutch kingdom, meaning help the other when they need help. That's one thing. So in 2020, following the onslaught of the pandemic, when then the Netherlands reached out, of course, with immediate help in terms of the medical help that we needed to deal with the pandemic. And then but then we were also looking for finances. Remember, at that time, you had a situation here in the country playing out. And that was the government of St. Martin at the time, 2020, having a clear position as to its relationship with the Netherlands. Because, Oral, we also have to admit and understand that the government that is sitting there currently, as I always put it, came in on an anti-Dutch agenda. Remember, before we had the election and you had all of that going on in Parliament, the airport was a saga by itself, etc., etc. So rather than trying to show what it is as a government they were standing for now that you're in government, forget about how you came to be and your agenda at the time. Now that you are in government, what did we see in 2020? Because of the pressure on the government came out and said, you know, we can't agree with you on this proposal for a coho. But the coho went to the Council of State. At that time, it was only with Curaçao's approval. Aruba came on the following month. St. Martin reluctantly the month thereafter. Country package, a similar thing. By the time St. Martin signed on to the country package, there was no room for negotiation. The country package was already developed. That's why if you look at the country package, so the initial document for Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Martin, it's a sort of a copy-paste.
Well, you know, MP, a lot of people, and these are not my words, but a lot of people have been saying publicly and some privately, it showed a lot of inexperience in the leadership of the current government. You
know, and one of one of the boasting statements right now of the government is, oh, we have been the longest serving government. So I guess the government members sat and waited, because I think the first government of country St. Martin, I think that one had gone like 19 months. So this government now is boasting of the fact that, oh, we have been the longest serving government. But the question is, how, Oral? How have you been the longest serving government? By kind of allowing the things that are happening, by having you pressured as a government into taking a stance against the Dutch government at the most unfortunate times. And if you're going to take that stand, Oral, then go with it all the way. Then go with it all the way. And as we would say here on St. Martin, make your choices, suck your salt.
And we're sucking our salt. The reason why I got to say this, Leopold James, on many occasions on this program, him and I, we disagreed a whole lot, because I was always in favor of separate status, in fact, of political independence, while they want to stay within the Netherlands and
that's
Antilles.
true.
Now, all these people are saying, look, we told you so. I still think we did the right thing by getting out, but there are a lot of people with this idea that we made a big mistake. We should have stayed within the Netherlands and Antilles, more power. But I still believe St. Martin did the right thing, but it's taken too long for us to really realize the power that we have within ourselves.
I totally agree with you, Oral. And of course, I know I wasn't one to stay within the Netherlands Antilles, because I have worked in that structure. And in a structure, Oral, where you and we were not solely responsible for our educational system. Remember, educational legislation was done on a federal level. Taxes, the same thing. You know, our tax legislation, our health legislation, these were done on a federal level. And that kind of a combination of competencies, justice was a federal authority. And just like you have it now, if you have a larger entity, which Curacao was at the time, that's where the seat of power was. That's where the main interests were of the politicians of that particular country, understandably so. But then what happened is, within the Charter of the Kingdom, Oral, you have, in an ideal situation, there are only 3 responsibilities of the kingdom government. Everything else is the responsibility of the individual countries. The question is, how are we executing those responsibilities? Those are not the Dutch responsibilities. Those are our responsibilities. And yes, the charter now, because now the Dutch politicians have sort of wisened up. So they look at a charter and they use that to kind of create all kind of hybrid situations. This coho law could have never come about. You can't have a consensus kingdom law, which the coho law is, Oral, without the full consensus of the countries involved. But what the Dutch government did, what State Secretary Knops did, is use the need for finances that was so urgent because of the COVID, and then say, you are going to have to agree to the coho. The coho is a consensus kingdom law. You can't have that if you don't have consensus. But consensus, how? Because you have been forced to agree to it. And I don't believe our government and government ministers, Oral, are up to the task of making that clear and standing by their position. They couldn't. Rather than step up to the plate to have that kind of a discussion, they here on St. Martin, you know, trying their, as we would say, playing checkers while a chess game is being played above our heads.
Well, some will say it took the former Netherlands Antilles over 4 decades to reach over 5 billion guilders debt. It took St. Martin 10 years to approach 1 billion guilder debt. That's a short period of time.
No, it definitely is, and you know, and that's why, Oral, I keep saying they could talk about, you know, the older politicians this, the older politicians that, but Oral, if we don't understand what is behind what is happening today, we're talking from an insecure position. This thing about, yeah, we help you. Even now, with the current state secretary, it's like, yeah, but you know, we give you a perfect, a good starting position as a country. Because we then, at that time, we cleared your debts. No, state secretary, no Dutch government, of the nearly 5 billion guilders debt of the Netherlands Antilles, St. Martin's part was negligible. And all we need to understand, that's why you had issues going back then, such as the pre-financing and those type of issues. Why? Because the government could not borrow. The government of St. Martin could not borrow. We could not borrow to build a road, to build a school. So you had these kind of pre-financing, I don't want to use the word schemes, but basically that's what they were. And, you know, so we didn't have this huge outstanding debt at a starting position. To the contrary, we inherited a debt. Because of the nearly 5 billion guilders debt, the Netherlands only cleared up to a certain ceiling. What was above that ceiling, the countries had to assume as country. We assumed a debt at the start of our country status. So unless you know this and you can really defend your position, we are just accepting, you know, whatever's being thrown at us.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we have to go to a quick break and we come right back, or right there.
In order to know what you want out of life, you need to observe, listen, and try it yourself. Promises, we can make it. If we work together, that's just how it is. Let's stand strong, and serve the land. Working hard as one nation, yes we can. The more difficult it is to achieve, the more satisfying it is to make it. Just believe in us, we'll see you through it all. Never give up. Never give up. We can make it. Never forget those who were there for you. And if you dream big, you might just achieve it. The power to serve, standing for community. OGB got the power to serve, the power to serve. We got the energy. OGB.
Make use of WIB mobile banking with easy access and direct usage of face recognition, PIN code, or fingerprint. Download WIB mobile banking app and make your transaction from anywhere at any time. For more information.
And in case you've just joined us, you're watching Oral Gibbes Live. I'm here speaking with leader of the United Democrat Party, MP Sarah Wescot-Williams. She's my guest of the program this evening, and we're here speaking with her. You know, you're the longest-serving prime minister and the first prime minister of St. Martin.
Yeah, that's right. That's the only term, so governing term, that went for the full 4 years. Yes, we had changes of the coalition makeup within that 4 years, but the governing term, so not having any elections in between, that's that up until now, that's the only 4-year term governance that we have had. And
then this other government now is trying to make sure to make it to
yes. They're trying very hard to make it to 2024. And you know, I hope that they do, because this government, I mean, this country can't use another period of instability, you know. But again, that can't and should not be at all cost, Oral, you know. You got to be together on the basis of some understanding, some plan that you have, but not, you know, behind the scene fighting with each other as a government.
The Princess Juliana International Airport, what's going on there? Because the amount of money, it seems to the average person, you know, you build an airport for X amount of money, and now you have to rebuild it when it's not being rebuilt, actually, and it's what, double, triple the cost? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the airport reconstruction is a considerable amount that is costing us. Of course, if we look at, and this is only a small fragment of the bigger picture, but if you only look at the cost of everything today, including material and construction, and you know, I mean, it's just through the roof. It's just crazy. And I'm sure not only our airport, but our projects, public and private projects, are going to be seeing a hard time because of this, Oral. But
it's also mismanagement because of the delays.
Well,
it's been what, 3,
yeah,
4 plus years.
From the beginning, from when it got started. And remember, the airport has been used as a political ping pong ball, you know, and that definitely cost us the way that the airport was handled in terms of its supervisory board, and then the government didn't want to act, and then the government finally just acted and took certain decisions. These type of things, of course, contribute, you know, to the slowing down, and in some case actually a stoppage of the project, you know, because of very much so political reasons, and the way that and again, it's our government, and some might say, yeah, but you know, why is always the government? Because they are responsible for these things, Oral. You know, I can't point fingers to anyone in the case of the airport than the shareholder, which is the government.
You know, we're going to wake up one morning and realize that we don't have it anymore. Our neighbors around us, Anguilla, St. Kitts, and we're heading for some difficult times down the road if we don't catch ourselves right now.
And you know, Oral, and I continue to say, it is amazing, and it is not only contributed to one factor, but several factors. You know, we often use the term resiliency, and we kind of use it, in my opinion, like loosely, oh, we're resilient and whatever have you. But, Oral, this country has a mix of factors that together make us strong. You know, all the things put together, because if that wasn't so, Oral, how after some of the fiascos that we have seen, St. Martin could still be where it is today. Look at the predictions that they have in terms of visitors to St. Martin. You know what I'm saying? And we need to try to understand, Oral, what the mix of what actually keeps St. Martin going. What all works together for us? You don't see it, you know, it's not part of any kind of formal economic scheme or anything, but there are factors that together, despite everything else, work for St. Martin. You know what I'm saying? When we are at our lowest, Oral, you still got people from all over the world trying to get to this country. Again, look at our numbers in terms of what the expectations are, rebounding following the COVID. But if we can't make the best out of that, especially for the St. Martin people, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And that's why I said that it's not going to last forever.
No, for sure not. Oh no. Oral, I want to give you an example. At the onslaught of the pandemic, right? And then all at once it was, people can't go to their jobs. Okay, but people have to continue to work. Businesses have to continue to run. And so then this idea about the countries in the Caribbean, okay, including St. Martin, being the perfect place to say to those persons who still can't go to the office, you know, come and enjoy a work vacation. Come do your work because you could sit down anywhere. You could sit down under the coconut tree and, you know, and send your work in. Digitalization, I mean, offers you all kind of possibilities. But so we started to talk about that oral, according to me, before any other country mentioned it. And while we still there figuring out what we're going to call it, who gonna get a credit for it, etc., etc. We ask about it in Parliament. No, it's coming. We're gonna come with a nomad policy, you know, attracting people to our shores and they can work from here, etc., etc. Or else, since we're talking about that, it ain't happened yet as a plan to say this is how we're gonna do it. But all around us, all the countries around us got it under different names. You know what I'm saying? Come to this country, enjoy our country, and at the same time do your work. And send it in, you know. So and that's just one example of how, as you mentioned, while we here talking and feeling, you know, that we're so much ahead of the pack that we can just rest on our laurels, and all next to us, you know, countries are just shooting ahead.
You know, at the same time, I said this last week, I have been very critical of TLM for the service. We're streaming now, a steady stream. I'm satisfied. It's very good. I don't know how long it's going to stay like this, but I got to compliment them with the fiber, because I'm looking at the stream and it's 5.5 constant all the time. Before you couldn't get that from Taylor. Before I couldn't do that. So that's a step in the right direction.
For sure.
And I think we need to do more like that.
Yeah. Overall, we talk about digitalization. We talk about e-government. We talk about e-governance.
For many years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, and that's a big thing now. Everything. So, and we have a project via the NRPB/World Bank organization. We have a digitalization project. But overall, all of the infrastructure around it needs to be in place, because you could have the most beautiful plan. And I think you could get plans, digitalization plans, written out a dime a dozen. But you as a country, once you decide what your plan is, how you're going about, what's going to be your target, how you know, but then you got to make sure that the infrastructure, communication, telecommunication around it is up to par. Yeah. Otherwise, those plans are going to go somewhere in a drawer and gather dust.
I know they still have a lot of work to do at TLM, but it's a beginning. So I think it's going to help this island in the long run. When you look at what happened during COVID and the 86.6 million or 86.2 million guilders in payroll support over an 18-month period, that's a lot of money. And do we have to pay that back? Or it's free money?
The what do we call it? The payroll support, and so, unless it was part of the liquidity assistance, it was a project. It was you know, so it was in essence a grant.
So we don't have to worry about that.
Not about that part, unless they lump it with the liquidity support. Then that's a different story.
Have you all spoke to the Minister of Finance about that?
Oh yeah, over and over have asked for reports on how this have, you know, how the program have gone. Yeah, on several occasions.
And was it transparent?
You know, I think that this government has a very particular stance towards the Parliament overall. You know, and that stands being one of, we go inform you when we think we should, you know, and then they come in, they use the Parliament platform, you know, basically to get a message across, not so much focusing on what the members of Parliament are asking and are critical about.
Okay. MP, you know, a lot of people feel that if the government of St. Martin should sell these government-owned companies like GEBE, the port, TLM, it will be good for St. Martin. But I know you're a politician, and I said earlier, you're not a Johnny-come-lately. Politicians enjoy having these companies because it gives them that added power. But it will make things, look, in Holland, this whole
yeah. You know, privatization or partial privatization is an ongoing discussion, even with TLM. And I don't think that those discussions regarding TLM has been completely shelved, although right now it's not a focus. Remember that this whole, whether it would have been partnershiping, you know, or some had even suggested complete sale of the company, but the focus at the time was on more of a partnership, so that TLM could have even gotten in extra money as a partner, and, you know, and do the necessary things. But those plans, I don't think are something under discussion right now any longer. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen any update on those discussions. But indeed, when it comes to completely selling your government-owned companies, yeah, you got not, some politicians are definitely not in favor. And again, overall, for me, that point, like anything that I believe you need to make a choice about is, okay, what is going to be the benefit? You know what I'm saying? So we're going to get in money. Is it to spruce up the company? Because in the case of TLM, if you get, as we used to call it, a strategic partner, you know, you can get all the latest technology, etc. A big partner would have deeper pockets, as we would say. So your objective of selling, it should never be without thinking beyond, oh, government can make quick money. You understand what I'm saying? It should never be only that, okay, let's sell it because we need money. You got to decide what is your reason for doing it. There has been talk on and off, warm and cold, regarding outsourcing the management of our port, of our seaport. That has been a couple of years ago. That was a big thing. They even had interested parties soliciting to do this, you know. So everything of the port, you'll put in someone else's hand, and you get, and they pay you something. That apparently right now is not a focus, neither for the port or the government. But again, saying all of that oral to say, we should know clearly why. You know, if you say let's sell that company because we need money, we could get money. I mean, that would be a choice. But we must be clear. Don't just sell your company, get your money, throw it in your government coffers, and then, you know, after the money is finished, used up, then you're going to decide, oh, what are we going to do about us not having ownership over that company any longer?
I mean, right now you look at it, and most of these companies should be paying what, 5 million guilders annually in dividends?
Around that amount, yes.
And I don't see why it can be done with privatization, and probably increase that, and still have some form of control in a way that may not be the best for politicians, and that is because these companies are owned by the government of St. Martin. Ministers can control in some way, and nobody wants to give up that. But in the end, we ought to have to do what's best for St. Martin.
Exactly. I totally agree. And again, you know, if you have a plan that says whether it's the partnership or to outsource the whole thing or to sell the company, maybe with a little, you remain with a little minority so that you can have one person. You know, I mean, there are different constructions possible as to how you would do it. But what would be your objective? You know, so we're doing it to spruce up the company, to get a better telecommunication, or we doing it to get extra dividend, you know, that the companies would pay the government. All of these things are considerations that you can have in the discussion, and it would differ, according to me, it would differ from company to company. Telecommunications is one thing, but your utilities company, you know what I'm saying? You'll have to look at you'll have to look at it in a different perspective.
And even with the utility company, there are big issues right now in terms of solar and other renewable energy that we are way behind.
Exactly.
And that's because of all the different issues there.
And still talking about it, you know, and it is a plan. Government has an energy plan, and that was also one of my criticisms with respect to the coho. In many of the areas, the government allowed the coho, not a coho so much, the coho is the organization, the country package to be developed as if there are no plans. You know what I'm saying? But we have an energy plan going back to I don't know how long. We have a stormwater management plan. We have an educational strategic plan. We had a mental health plan. You know what I'm saying? But given follow-up to these plans and having the priorities where financing is necessary to make sure that these matters are prioritized in the budget, that has not been happening.
Well, according to the Dutch government representative here in St. Martin, he said that we are only adding on to what you all had already.
But in the case of, do we know? Do we know what we have? Did the government and the ministers and the ministries take time out and say, in the area of Romy, these are our plans. In the area of education, this is what we got already. Or how many tax proposals haven't we had? Okay. Take that as a good example. Why couldn't, and everybody agrees to the two main principles, a more simple tax structure and a modern tax administration. Or since I have been, and I'm talking since Island Council days, since 10, every Minister of Finance has been talking and has presented proposals for tax reform.
Well, I guess we need the Dutch to really get things moving.
Yes, and that's what a lot of persons are saying too. My only thing is that I think we need to demystify the whole coho concept and understand it's an organization, but when it comes down to how these matters, so you got an implementation agenda, you get a plan of approach, and when you get the things that need to be done in finance, that's a totally different kettle of tea. And we need to realize that, because then the government is going to be forced to look at its budget and make sure that it's the country package items that are reflected in your budget.
Kettle of tea. I never heard that one before. That's a good one.
Another kettle of tea.
Well, Peter, we out of time. I have about 40 seconds, all yours.
Thank you, Oral. It was really a pleasure again talking to you. And, you know, these are some burning issues. And I just can encourage you and others, you know, to continue your interest in what is happening in the country. From my perspective, I look at it, and where necessary, I am very critical of the government and the government handling of different issues. But at the end of the day, I think we all want to ensure that St. Martin remains a good place and becomes a better place for all of us who want to continue to call St. Martin home and basically turn it over to future generations.
Well, again, thank you very much and much success. And that's it for now. I'll see you next time right here on Oral Gibbes Live. Until then, good night. Take care. Bye.